Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in and joining us today. We are excited to kick off a brand new season of the virtual interview series. We have an awesome guest today, and I can't wait for you to meet her. So, Hannah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, April.
Yes, could you take just a few minutes and tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, and where you're from?
So, my name is Hannah Vega, and I am a talent management and strategy specialist, which is not very indicative of what I actually do, but it means that I oversee all on air talent for the Magnolia Network. So, that means anyone that's a host of a show, I work directly with them. And when other teams from the network need them for marketing or promotional reasons, they come to me and I reach out to them. And currently, I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, but my office is in New York.
Oh, okay. So when you talk about talent management, you said you work directly with the host. Does that also mean anyone that's on the show? Do you book the guests? Do you book the on air talents? What else entails your job?
So, in this role, it's a little bit different just because we are launching a brand new network. Um, a lot of it comes from the production companies, or our company is actually led by Chip and Joanna Gaines. And Joe is very good at identifying people she wants to work with. And she has a very clear vision of what she wants her network to be. Chip does as well, but she really is the one who searches Instagram and follows people for years and decides, oh, let's start with them first before we go out and kind of widen the net, because she's just drawn to so many people that she's invested like years, watching. In my previous role, working for Oprah, we did more of the booking along the lines of that. So I would be pitching people to host panels or specials, or we would find, whoever would make sense if we couldn't get this person for a specific show.
Yeah. So I can imagine it's very exciting to launch a brand new network. But I know it may have taken you some different jobs and different roles to get to where you are today. So could you please tell us about your professional journey, explain how you got to where you are today?
So when I was in high school, first I had thought for a very long time I was going to be a doctor. I actually went to Emory University for a medicine seminar thing. It was like a month program, I'm pretty sure. And it wasn't necessarily with Emory, but it was at Emory and used a lot of Emory doctors to come and explain to us procedures and different things and like what the road ahead was or would be. And I kind of came away from that thinking maybe it's not for me. I still liked all of what I learned, but watching Grey's Anatomy does not quite equate to what an actual doctor does. And I was seeing that maybe I would have wanted to be a nurse, actually, because you get more flexibility with what you do. And I just thought about it and I was like, nope, I'm going to be a journalist. So before I finished college, I only wanted to go to one school, which was the University of Southern California, which is where I actually went. And I was going to be either a public radio person or I was going to be a Middle Eastern correspondent. So I'm Jewish, and I went on a birthright trip, which is where, the state of Israel pays for people of Jewish descent, culture, to visit. And Israel and Gaza were exchanging rocket fire at the time. And so we'd have to go into like bunkers and go around different paths, and we couldn't go to some parts of the cities. And I was like, yep, I can do it. I'll be a Middle Eastern correspondent. But I had a tattoo with Hebrew on it on my arm. And they were like, one, you already are a target because you're American. And two, because you have Hebrew on you, that shows that you're on one side. So people are automatically going to assume that you're on that side as opposed to the Arabic side. So I was like, okay, not so safe. I'll be a political reporter. And that's actually what I started doing. So in my school's newsroom, I was a political anchor. I followed campaigns. Trump was my candidate up through 2018. It was really funny because I was probably the most senior, or I guess experienced, I don't like saying that because I think we all bring different experiences to the table, but person in my newsroom, but I didn't have the time commitment. So we just were like, it's going to be Jeb Bush. He's going to be the candidate for the Republicans. So I was like, Trump will be out. It'll be great. And then lo and behold, he became our president. So I went to the conventions, the Republican and Democratic ones, and I worked with Bloomberg and a lot of different outlets to publish things on the campaign trail. And I think I just got a little burnt out in all honesty. And it was hard for me as someone who likes to separate my own biases from the work I do. It came to a point that I felt like I couldn't do that or as adequately as I would have wanted to. So I actually was supposed to work for Good Morning America right out of college. I had a family issue and I couldn't take that job. So it was like literally my dream job, everything I worked for. I had to come home to Atlanta and take care of my mom. And I nannied. So I nannied for a while, and then I didn't know what else I wanted to do because I had only had one internship back home, which was my first internship at CNN. But because I had been out of the CNN cycle, I had worked at other places. I was number 2 always for like any job that came my way. It was like, well, we hired someone internally. And it was really frustrating. But I figured I'm right out of college. I can still get another internship at another brand. So I worked at Turner Classic Movies, which was just something I wanted to do for myself while I figured out, okay, I banked on this, very well-paying job in New York, and it was going to be exciting. And all my friends were there doing exciting things. And now I'm back home. I'm stuck at home. So after working in production for a while, I did a few different things. I just reached out to some old mentors and asked, hey, do you know of anything? I'm trying to maybe get back to LA or go to New York. What do you think? And one of my mentors actually, she has been with Miss Winfrey for 25 years, I believe. And she was like, actually, you could come work for me. So that's kind of how I got into talent. And it's been super interesting and very fun, but it was completely different. I had never thought I would, be going down this path.
I'm so glad that you shared that with us, because so many times what we think we're going to be doing in high school is absolutely not what we're doing as an adult. And that's okay to change your mind. It's okay to take those twists and turns. And it's exciting when you have new doors open up to you. I also love that you mentioned a mentor. I think networking and mentorship are such key, integral parts of what your professional journey is. So my next question for you is, could you tell us a little bit about what your daily activities look like? You kind of gave us the overall broad definition of what your job role is, but when you wake up, when you get started on your work day, what does that look like? Just a normal day for you? So
as we all know, nothing is normal right now, or it's a new normal. So I guess going back to what I did before, which is the same thing, just, for a different brand, I would be going to events. I would be booking people's flights and getting their hair and makeup set up and ready for photo shoots and negotiating with them to be like, please, will you record this video for us? It's really important. And yeah, we kind of need it today. I'm really, really sorry that we weren't able to put this in front of you before, and that you're now having to spend your day doing something for us for free, basically. So that's a lot of what I was doing. And then there was this huge pivot to, well, we're going to do these campaigns to uplift people. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. So it was a lot more of, hey, we have this initiative. Can you volunteer your time? And it was less about like the glam and the fun stuff. That kind of, it was so fun to be able to do that. But also a bigger component grew from that was identifying, talent. So I was able to pitch people for things that we would never have considered before. This was primarily working for the Oprah Winfrey Network, but it still was kind of translating into Magnolia. So it would be, my days would be spent, okay, let me look at this category, say fashion. Who in fashion is up and coming? Who is in line with our brand and the sensibility. And that would be a good representative and someone that we want to uplift and empower. And that's my favorite part of the job is either it's identifying or already having someone, but feeling like they can kind of take on the world in a way that they didn't think they could a lot of the times, because there's a difference with scripted talent. Because at the Oprah Winfrey Network, we had a lot of scripted talent. So these are seasoned people. They've been in shows for forever, or maybe even if not, like they have a different a sensibility, I guess, around what their role and purpose is. But a lot of the times working with unscripted people, they're everyday people originally. And they don't have this idea that they're going to do beyond kind of what their day job is. And so when you take someone like a farmer now at Magnolia, who she's based here in Atlanta, her name's Jamila. You know, she's been working, she was an engineer. Then for the past 10 years, she has just done farming and tried to educate like the local community about like eating seasonally and the benefits of, you know, eating according to it, just like, and it's a more of a holistic view, I guess, around wellness and health, and gardening comes into play. But, you know, she probably was like, I'm getting a TV show. Like it doesn't make any sense. Or these people, the Benzakines that have Floret farms, like they just decided that they were going to like expand their farm, where they, you know, grow flowers, and now they have a show. So it's kind of interesting just talking with them. And since we're in launch mode at Magnolia, a lot of it is different than if we were already established. So it's really just building those relationships, introducing ourselves, because we're not actually hanging out with them at shoots like we would be. So it's all through Zoom, trying to get to know people, and then just send them things saying, hey, your episode's going to be a preview on the new Discovery Plus service. We're still launching the network, but like, just so you know, the pilot you shot 2 years ago is finally going to be seen, you know? So it's really fun to be able to do so many different things, even though the world has kind of changed drastically.
Yes. I mean, I think that would be a huge understatement for this year, but that's exciting that you guys are still getting to work with these people, even if it's virtually, getting to know them. And it sounds like that's a big role of what you do, is getting to know the people that you're working with. And I'm sure that's very different for the different people that you meet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of my talent says I have to be the therapist, and like some of my bosses too. It's like you have to be the therapist, the best friends, the boss. Like it's such a weird role, because and sometimes you kind of feel like not quite manipulative, because you make it known, no, I am on your side, because most of the time these requests are crazy for people, or you know that they're so busy and they don't really want to do something, but they have to do it. So you're just kind of like, well, you love me and I love you and we respect each other, and I really need this done. Thank you so much. So it's a lot of that and hand holding, but it's great.
Yes. Okay. So you probably, and I know you touched on this a little bit, but in talking about your professional journey, one of the things I love to ask our guests is, when you have encountered obstacles all along your life, what is some advice or what are some strategies that you use to overcome those obstacles and keep going?
It's a great question. So I never really had an end goal in sight. Like, even though I said I wanted to be a doctor, I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to be like the chief of a hospital or something. I've never had those specific positions in mind. And I think that's just led me to having overall adaptability, because I'm like, oh, I would like to have this experience. So for me, if I see roles or opportunities that come my way as an experience, I think that helps me achieve greater adaptability. And I think one of the greatest assets someone can have, besides being kind and being helpful and resourceful, is being adaptive. Especially now, we all see that Like the more you can pivot, the better. So if you see, oh, I didn't plan on this happening, well, that's an experience and that's something that happened, but that doesn't determine what else, happens after that, because something else can come from it. So for me, I wouldn't have gotten into talent really if I hadn't taken a step back, taken an internship. And mind you, when I went about my journey in college, even though I did internships, they were all paid, but I always had 2 jobs. And then I worked a third job with a PR company. So I was making California minimum wage for 2 jobs and would have like events like on the weekends that I would work. So I went from that to minimum wage in Georgia. So that was like a third of what I made or less. I don't know. And I just had to do it because I was like, well, I can keep nannying and make good money nannying, but that's not going to get me anywhere. And I've always kind of wanted to get more into production, so I might as well do it. And then from that, I was able to work events with talent and then saw that it was a thing. And then that was one of the reasons probably why I reached out to my mentor, because I was like, well, you do this and I'm more interested in it. And if there was a position at Turner, then I would have been given it, but they were under the Warner Media merger and that was all happening, that transition. And, it's still kind of an ongoing process. So I just knew I couldn't stay there, or I would have to wait a long time before I could actually have a greater move within that company at the time. But it is kind of demoralizing or dejecting if something does hinder your ability to do what you want to do. Like when I couldn't take the job at Good Morning America, I was devastated. Obviously, like, what did I spend all this time in college doing? And now I have debt and like, I don't really know how to navigate business. Like, I don't have parents that know how to navigate business that well, or they have followed different paths. So it's up to me to kind of take time and figure out what makes sense for me, and just go from there. And then, you know what? I was great at getting coffee, when we had those really early studio shoots, I would just remember what people liked. I'd write it in my phone and then see if they ordered it more than once or twice. Oh, maybe that's what their go-to order is. So then I could ask them before they even had to bother telling me all their little customizations. And so I was just the best coffee person I could be. And I think that when you do those little things, even if you're like, well, I know all this stuff and this is not necessarily what I feel is the best use of my time, but if you do it and you're willing to do it and you offer to do those little things that make a difference, I think other people notice, and that also helps you get more opportunities back too.
That is the best advice. I absolutely love that. Sometimes we do have to do the hard jobs or the jobs that we don't necessarily think are the jobs for us, but when you do them to the best of your ability and better than anybody else in the room, that's when doors open and opportunities become available. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. So the next question that I have for you is, what is something that you wish you would have learned at an earlier age? Maybe when you're still in high school or right out of college, what would be something that you would tell your younger self?
So I think I did a lot of growing up really fast just because of my own situation. But I've always just been a proponent of like, you can never learn enough and you can never keep working on yourself and keep building yourself. And I think that's super important. But when it comes to more, I guess, being educated about like the day to day of being an adult, like there's not that many people that tell you that, there's not a great class in school that goes over that. I remember I took a math studies class just so I could learn what statistics kind of were, because they didn't get into that in the other programs unless I took like the advanced placement statistics, and I didn't have room in my schedule for that because I was in the international baccalaureate program. So for me, going to college, I thought I knew a lot of stuff as like a smart, pretty responsible, independent person. I mean, I didn't really do my laundry. I will admit I was spoiled for that. So then I kind of was like, okay, how do we do laundry? And then luckily Tide Pods came and I was like, oh, I don't even have to worry about measuring. I just throw a few of these in. And that was great. But my parents didn't teach me about finance at all. When I was little, I would ask my grandma about like the stock market and things, but I still didn't have payments and utilities. No clue. So for me, it was very much more about, okay, how do I learn about all that stuff? How am I self-sufficient? How do I, realize that if my company is paying me, I need to elect for taxes, like all of that. And I think I got like the first taste of that really doing all this stuff for FAFSA and all those college admitting things. I was like, I don't know. And my mom was like, the tax prepares the taxes. I don't know anything, but here they are. You can like go through. And I'm like, okay, what is this line item? So I think it's making smarter decisions about money. And I think that is really helpful because that is such a hindrance to you if you don't learn about that early on. And if you're banking on, oh, well, I work 3 jobs and I make really good money and I don't have to work 3 jobs, but I'm just doing it so I can get the experience and I'm still able to pay all my bills and then go on these fancy trips, and you're still racking up debt and maybe you have college loans. It's not the smartest place to be in when you're done, because you never know, maybe you can't take that job that you thought you were going to be taking. So it's hard to get out of it if you're not smart about it.
Yes, I've always said personal finance is incredibly important, something they should teach in every single high school classroom, because it's very basic ideas, but it's something that completely impacts every aspect of your future. So the last question that I have for you, and then I'm going to ask you a few of our submitted questions from students, is what is some actionable advice that students could do right now while they're still in high school to prepare them for their future? Maybe they're interested in a career in production or television. What would be something that they could start doing right now, today?
I think the biggest thing is looking at what you do want to do or what you're interested in, even if you don't know, and just trying to find people in those roles. And this is something I tell my mentees all the time. Most of the time, they're in college. But it's the same thing. Like if I like a movie, I want to know how the movie's made. And maybe that's just me, but like I'll look through and see, okay, this cinematographer, maybe I'm not going to call that cinematographer. I have no way to get in touch with them, but I see, oh, I like this. Who else works for them? And I think that's really helpful. So starting with, I really like this person. Maybe it's an influencer because I know that's super popular now, or, a real estate agent. And maybe those people are not in your lives. Maybe you don't have exposure to them, but if, they're accessible online, and most people are these days, if you just send a pretty professional email, it could be short and to the point. Hi, I'm a high schooler. I'm really interested in what you do or learning more. Can I take you out for coffee, or can we have a virtual Zoom? I would really appreciate it because I don't know what that means. I don't know what your role means, but I think it's in a field that I want to be in. And it's more helpful, obviously, if you know the person, but I would say don't be afraid to cold email people. LinkedIn is such a useful tool for young people these days because you can really find anyone. And I've used it as a journalist to be like, okay, who works at this research hospital because there's like an active shooter, like the randomest ways LinkedIn can be used, but going back to its original purpose is really helpful. And then, yeah, if there's an adult in your life that's really interesting, maybe you can start there. Ask them if they have friends. Ask your uncle who does a cool job in architecture. Hey, I don't want to talk to you because I know you and whatever, but who's someone on your team maybe that's lower level that has time that can kind of explain, getting started to me better, because even if I've seen you peripherally do it, it's probably helpful to go somewhere else. Because you might have already had those conversations too, but if you're really interested, you might want to know what it's really like. And sometimes I think people starting out can be a bit more transparent or clued into like, well, my day-to-day is actually making grids all day, or like inputting data in something. And then you're like, okay, that's not as fun. But even though that's not fun, there are really cool perks to the rest of that job. And they're really telling me kind of the whole gamut, and giving me a full idea of what it is. But
Absolutely. I think not being afraid to reach out, having that courage to just ask, you would be surprised so many times how many professional people want to be mentors, want to help and give back, because we've all been there. We've all been high school students before. So we know what that feeling is like of just not knowing what's next. And so definitely encourage, as you said, to reach out. Don't be afraid to ask. So great advice. Okay, so we do have a few questions from students. The first one is, what characteristics do you look for when you're booking talent? It's a good question.
Well, for me, when I book talent, it is very dependent on who I'm booking talent for. Because in a way, I feel kind of like they're the client and I have to deliver. So luckily, the brands that I've recently worked for are very much in alignment on, it's like this holistic thing. Like, Oprah transcends kind of everything, but her whole thing is uplifting and positivity. And the motto of the Oprah Winfrey Network is see yourself, because they want to reflect, stories for Black women primarily. So there's that whole level to it. But for Magnolia, it's kind of the same thing, where it's like family, love, growth, and a little bit of levity, I think, is something that gets missed too. So when I'm looking at talent, I kind of know instantly if a person is a fit or not. And that kind of sucks, because it is kind of like a first impression type thing. And you don't ever want to judge a book by its cover, but you still know, like, someone who is a fit for VH1 or MTV, probably not a fit for OWN or Magnolia or another Discovery thing, unless it's maybe something on TLC. So you just have to be really cognizant of who, you're trying to pitch and for what. I think for me personally, I like being able to bring a new voice to a conversation. So if there is someone with a small following, because a lot of the times you still do have to do so, and that's kind of prominent, at least on social media, or has done stuff because they want to tap into their audience, or that different audience that like adds another layer or dimension to the show. I really care about that. So if someone's young enough, because sometimes you also have to be mindful, well, if only this age range is going to be watching this show, then I have to get someone kind of in their age range. So I can't maybe go as young or as fun as what I would envision myself. But sometimes you can. So I think it's that. And it's also, who do I want to work with? Who's putting out cool stuff, whether it's interesting or like the production is really cool. Like the thought behind it is really cool. It's the intentionality of it. And I think, finding someone like my friend Adrienne. So we had reconnected. She had gone to my school. She's kind of a mentor for a little bit. We forgot we met. It was this crazy story, but now she's a host on OWN. And I brought her to the table, and it's so cool because it's the fact that she brings kindness to everything she does. That's her whole thing, her whole MO. And I guess diversity and leadership are other aspects to what she does in her day job as an ABC correspondent. But it's that light that's within a person, I think, really shines. And for me, I just want to put good people, like if I can give someone an opportunity, I want them to be mostly good or decent, or someone I know that can kind of take on whatever is kind of being thrown or put upon them. the Oprah name has a lot of weight. So I think that was really great training around, because it was like anything you do, even if she's not involved, people are going to assume she's involved, and they're going to say, hey, do you know Oprah? And you're going to be like, no, if you're just the talent doing one thing. So you have to know that they have to still be in that realm and they're still representing a person. And I think when I'm booking something for TLC, I don't have to think about a person. Or for Food Network, maybe it's just like, okay, well, they still have to, have this knowledge of, the kitchen and whatever else. But definitely it just is all about servicing your client at the end of the day and what they need. But if you can put that little spin on it yourself for what you like or what you believe, and kind of share a different voice, I think that's always most interesting for me.
Yeah. So that's a perfect lead in to the next question that we have. And that is, in launching a new network, how important is it to have a brand and stay consistent with the brand?
So when launching a new network, how important is it to stay consistent with brands? It's very important. I think people on the Magnolia side would say it's the most important. People more from a network standpoint might say it could be a hindrance. But I think whatever you do, you kind of need to stand behind what you do. You can admit you're wrong or you pivot, but I think when you have a clear vision and you're driven to show that vision or present that vision in a certain way, then you kind of need to trust your gut. And the Magnolia brand in particular is so strongly, people identify so many things. I think it brings, if you know of Magnolia or the Gaineses, you have this instant idea of what it's about, I would say. So for them, everything that we do has to show that and represent that. And I think it's easier said than done a lot of the time. And, you want to be in control of so many things when you do have a brand that's so solid or that you want to keep growing upon. Because I think there's also this perception, maybe not necessarily badly, but just differently, like maybe people are not as exposed to the other facets of the brand. So being able to present those and show, actually, we care about these things too. And maybe you didn't know that. It's a fun way to experiment and kind of just grow in other ways. So as long as you're taking that like core, that seed, and nourishing it, I think the rest can kind of flourish and grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Hannah, we have enjoyed chatting with you today. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything you want to leave with the students before we go today?
I guess so. I would just say, people say like bring your best foot forward. That's harder to do a lot of the times. But I think what is important to do is just to stand by your word and to really show and demonstrate what you can do. Because a lot of the times you won't know who's watching you. But that person could be the person that makes the difference in your life. Or maybe you mess up, but it's how you resolve that mistake or overcome that, that is more indicative of the kind of person you are. And I would just say, don't be dejected, like just keep pivoting. Even if you aren't feeling so happy, like put a smile on your face if you're working with other people, because it's just so much more helpful for them to know that you're open and ready to put aside, maybe what's happening personally with what you can still bring to the table. But still take care of yourself, obviously, in other times. But I would just say, yeah, be open, be adaptable, and remember, it's the little things I think that really make a person and show their character, as opposed to just, hi, I'm this person and I'm preparing for an interview. I'm a terrible interviewer, obviously.
But you are doing an awesome job today.
Thank you. But I mean, it's not about that. It's the little things, I think, that count.
Yes, that is awesome advice. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for everyone that has tuned in. We have an awesome lineup for our spring series, so be sure and check back every single week for a new industry professional.